John Lusk here at Lusk Archery Adventures. Serious testing, successful hunting. Today I want to talk about something that every bow hunter will experience at some point or another. Discouragement. Bow hunting discouragement. You know what we love about bow hunting is also what we hate about bow hunting. What we love about it is the challenge. It's an incredible challenge to stealthily approach an animal or ambush an animal and to draw back your bow and slip that arrow right into the sweet spot and harvest that animal quickly and ethically. Man, what an incredible challenge that is. But it's also an incredible challenge that's loaded with all kinds of errors that are bound to be made. There's just an infinite list of things that can go wrong. And the longer you bow hunt, the more you're going to be checking those mistakes off the list and making those mistakes. I have made so many mistakes in the nearly 50 years that I've been bow hunting. Man, I have lists and lists. I can close my eyes and picture stories from 40 years ago, 45 years ago of mistakes that I made. I remember back when I was like a preteen in Louisiana, bow hunting hogs in Honey Island Swamp and Pearl River Wildlife Management Area of Slidell, Louisiana. I used to love going there with my dad. And I finally had my first shot on a big game animal. It was a hog that came running in. It was about 30 yards away, and I drew back, and I wasn't using sights, and I was bare bow, but it was just, I just rushed it, and I shot that arrow right over his back, and it stuck in this tree. I mean, just a couple inches over, and I was so discouraged. I missed that opportunity. Or I remember a time when I was bow hunting whitetails in Missouri, again in my early years, and it was the first time I was going to use a grunt tube. Okay, I saw that on a TV show, and I'm like, I'm going to buy a grunt tube. So I went to Walmart, bought a grunt tube, and went out, and I sat in this little area, and I went, and here comes this buck. It actually worked. And this big old buck, biggest buck I'd seen in the woods, comes right in. I had the grunt tube in my mouth. It's like on a lanyard around my neck, and I drew my bow back, and the buck was like in position where I could shoot it. But then I realized that the tube is sticking between the string and the bow, and I'm like, shoot. So I just let it out of my mouth, and then the buck was in a great spot. Boom, I release. Well, when I let it out of my mouth, it fell inside my bowstring, and that bowstring came in, and man, it caught the string and about ripped my neck off. I mean, actually, the grunt tube flew toward the deer, and the arrow went in the exact opposite direction. I had no idea what happened, and neither did the buck. The buck literally just stood there and looked at me like, you doofus. Like, it just stood at me, and I didn't have time to get another shot in it, and it eventually took off. But man, I remember that mishap. Or gosh, I mean, so many others. Wounding animals. What a horrible thing to wound an animal and not find him. It's like every bow hunter's greatest fear, and it happens way more than people let on. A lot of times people go, didn't have an opportunity. You did, and you missed, or you wounded it and couldn't find it. I certainly have done that. I've done that with whitetail. I've done it with hogs. I've done it with turkey. I've done it with elk. I even did it once with an aoudad. Man, I really want an aoudad. I've not recovered. I've never gotten an aoudad. I wounded one time and never found it. That's like the most discouraging thing. And when we face those discouragements, man, it is like the lowest of the lows. But how you handle those moments and how you handle that discouragement, like any area of life, is really going to determine how successful you become. If you handle those discouragements well, you're going to get better and better. You handle those discouragements and mishaps poorly, you're just going to get worse and worse in bow hunting. So how do you handle those discouragements? Well, I have a don't do and then some do-dos, okay? The don't do. First, don't overreact. Don't overreact. In the height of your emotion, in the height of your discouragement, don't say, I quit. I'm never bow hunting again. Okay, I have done that. I've thrown my bow down. I'm never picking up my bow again. You know, a week later, I'm like, hey, let's go out there and go hunting again. But don't overreact. Don't quit. And don't be so quick to blame your gear. I'm never using that broadhead again. That's the last time I use a mechanical. That's the last time I use a fixed blade. That's the last time I use this bow. Like, don't be so quick to blame your gear. It may not be the arrow, it may be the Indian, right? So the most important thing is don't overreact. But then what do you do? First, do evaluate. When things have calmed down, when you're looking back, evaluate everything about your season. I really love doing this. I like to evaluate my strategy. What was my strategy from scouting to stand placement, to every day of my hunt, how much time on stand and my regimen, everything. Evaluate your strategy. Evaluate your setup, your draw weight, your draw length, your arrow, your bow tune, the broadhead you're using, the release you're using, the sight you're using. Like, is there something you can do to make it better? Evaluate your setup, and then evaluate your execution. If you had a shot opportunity and you didn't get that animal, what went wrong? At that moment of truth, what went wrong? Did you just kind of blank out and aim for center mass? Did you hit a branch? Did you move too fast? Like, what went wrong in the execution? Evaluate all those areas. And then another final thing to do is learn one lesson. If you can learn at least one solid lesson that just becomes a part of you, that you go, okay, this is what I'm going to make sure I do from now on, or not do from now on. If you can learn one lesson from each of those mishaps, each of those discouragements, you're going to get better and better. And I find that if I can latch onto a really good, solid lesson, I feel the discouragement less, and I start feeling the excitement and enthusiasm more about looking ahead to the future and how much better I'm going to become. And so I think over the years, gosh, so many lessons I've learned like that. Like here in Iowa. I moved to Iowa about 5 years ago, had a pretty small property to hunt. And the biggest lesson I learned that first season when I saw very few bucks was minimize my footprint. Minimize my footprint. I had set up a bunch of trail cameras. I went in like every 3 weeks, checking the trail cameras, seeing all kinds of bucks on the trail cameras, switching out the SD card, putting in more batteries, things like that. But man, I walked through that area way too much. By the time the season rolled around, the bucks were like, I'm out of here because John's got cameras everywhere and he's checking them like crazy. I don't want to be around him. And also when I was approaching my stands, I would always take the same approach to those stands. And so in the next season, my theme was minimize my footprint. I switched to all cellular trail cameras where I set them up in July, never went in there again until I hunted. And then every time that I approach my tree stands, I approach them from a different direction. I thought, what's the most stealthy, like scent-free way I can approach that stand from a different direction each time? The second season, I got my largest buck to date. It like made a huge difference to learn that lesson of minimizing my footprint. Or there's another time in St. Louis that right at last light, this beautiful buck came out, and I was using a double caliber release, and it was too dark. I looked down, it was kind of in a shadow, and I couldn't get my release attached to my D-loop, and I had to fumble around for about, 3 or 4 seconds. By that time, I missed the opportunity at the buck. So I switched to a hook-style release, which for me, man, they're the best, okay? Everybody's different, but for me, it's just, I can do it without looking. I can just attach it with my, I hold my thumb and just hook it on, and boom, it's great for Western hunting, great for tree stand, great for low light. You can do it blindfolded, but for me, that was a lesson learned because of that mishap that made me a better hunter. Another thing I've learned, higher tree stands. Man, I know it's a pain. You might have to look harder to get a tree that you can go up higher in. You may have to cut off more branches. You may have to buy more steps. But the higher you are, the more you can get away with. And reaching for your bow or being above the scent line or something like that, it makes a world of difference. I can't believe how much more I can get away with in movement when I'm really up high compared to being a little bit lower. That's a lesson I learned from getting busted too many times. Or another, scent control. Man, I take it really seriously. I look at the winds and I go, make my stand selection 100% based on the wind. The wind has to be right for me to go in there. You see them talk about it on TV, but it's easy to think, I can get away with it. I usually can't get away with it. Or maybe looking into something like ozonics. I switched to ozonics a couple years ago and it really works, okay? I don't know. I haven't done exhaustive tests, but empirically, just practically, it seems to work really well for me. But I'm as meticulous as I can possibly be about washing, spraying, scent wipes, and approaching my stand the right way, watching the wind direction, all those things, and it really makes a difference. Another lesson I've learned the hard way, practicing. I had to switch several years ago to actually practicing year-round. I never stopped because my muscles were just getting too weak in the off-season. As I got older, it was taking more than a couple months to get back into form. So I just learned this lesson. Okay, I got to shoot year-round. That made a big difference. But then I had to learn another lesson to keep practicing during the season. Because what I found happening was I would practice so much in the summer leading up to September, October, and man, I'm getting like, I don't know, 1.5 inch groups at 40 yards. But then during the season, I'm not practicing at all. And the season's like a few months long. So like I went out to practice this one time during the season, and man, my groups went from like 1.5 inches at 40 yards to about 5 inches at 40 yards. And that's under calm conditions. And I thought, whoa, man, I've got to keep practicing during the season. Just a few shots in the basement, a few days a week, or going out to the range even during the season, it makes a world of difference. Another for me is keeping my quiver attached to my bow. I like using a tight spot quiver. It's really quiet, but I don't have to, if I need a second shot, I don't have to like fumble around and reach for an arrow. It's just right there and I can do it so fast. I know a lot of people like to take off their quiver. Great, more power to you. But for me, I made a mistake. I missed the deer. I needed a second shot. And when I was making that movement to get to my quiver, that's when the deer saw me. I switched to keeping my quiver on. And man, I haven't had that problem. I've put multiple arrows in deer multiple times over the years since I made that mistake and since I learned that lesson by having that quick second shot ready on my quiver. Another, aiming small. We all know that. Aim small, miss small. But man, in the heat of the moment, what I was finding myself doing a lot of times was just aiming for center mass. And I would say what a lot of young bow hunters say, I think I hit it a little far back. Okay, it was just happening too much and I wasn't recovering some animals. And so I had to really think like, make it a great shot. Where's my arrow going to exit? Okay, what is the exact hair that I'm trying to hit on there? And really think of myself like a sniper and not just get excited. There's a deer, but think like a sniper. I'm going to put it right in this sweet spot. Just aiming small. Like there's an infinite list of lessons and I have them. I have like this list that I write them down. I write them down even just, in my memory. I memorize them. And my goal is every mistake I make, every mishap I make each season, instead of it getting me discouraged, it's just going to make me better because I'm going to learn that one lesson and get better and better and better. And so even I find that when I'm discouraged, if I can learn a really good lesson, not a reactionary, overstatement, but a really good lesson, then I start getting hopeful for the next opportunity and the next season. So I hope that helps you. Maybe you had a rough season. Maybe you experienced some mishap or discouragement. Join the club. We've all done it. But my hope is that you won't overreact, that you will evaluate, and then you will learn one lesson to make you a better bow hunter in the future. What's a lesson you've learned from some mishap that you've experienced like that? If you wouldn't mind, take a minute or two and write some of those lessons learned down below in the comment section. And that way we can all read through it and we can all learn from each other's mistakes. And rather than being discouraged, we can all get better and better and be encouraged and be more successful bow hunters in the future. Thanks for watching. I hope this is helpful. Take care. Good luck. God bless.